before that he had kind of indicated that he wanted to try to play. But we'll see what he did today and more. Tom Moore covers the Philadelphia 76ers, longtime Sixers beat writer from Calkins Media, now here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. As we know, these next 24 hours, Tom, will be very, very interesting for the Philadelphia 76ers. Is there a strong sense either way that Brian Colangelo is itching to do something here?
I mean, I think ideally he would like to make a move. I think he would like to move Okafor if he can get close to fair value. I guess the question is, does he get it? Will he make a trade anyway after telling us, soon after taking the job, that he would never make a bad trade for the 76ers? So, it's probably close to 50-50 at this point if he sticks to his guns. If he just makes the best deal, well, then he could probably do that anytime. I'm sure I would think he's hoping that somebody will come up with a better offer at the last minute, which does tend to happen with these things. Tomorrow morning, early tomorrow afternoon, people say, well, we can get this guy for 60, 70 cents on the dollar. I'd really like him. We think he's undervalued. He can score, he can get 18 and 8 or whatever. Let's make a move.
Tom, do you think Colangelo regrets a little bit of how everything has gone down with Okafor the last 2 weeks or so?
Well, I mean, he certainly hasn't increased the value, holding him out that Saturday night home game against the Heat, and then not having him go to Charlotte for the Monday game, and then he ended up returning Tuesday in Boston, in the last game before the All-Star break. So I wonder if he had to do it again, if he wouldn't have gone out last year at the draft and before the draft and said, we need to get roster balance. We got to move a big guy to restore some balance here. We're too top heavy with bigs. We need some guards and shooters and so on. I don't know, but as I just said before, that was another thing he did that probably didn't increase the value. And although everybody knew it, it may even do.
Sixers beat writer Tom Moore is with us. Okafor, do you think that he is the most likely guy? There's been some reports today that teams are now kind of refocusing on Nerlens, mainly because, maybe they find him to be a better fit.
Well, I think the thing, Mike, with Nerlens Noel is the big thing is, what does Brian Colangelo plan on doing this summer? I mean, somebody could come up with $70 or $75 million offer sheet over 5 years for Noel. Are you going to match it? If you're not going to match a contract like that, you lose him for nothing. So if that's the case, and you think, and there's a decent chance if you look at the numbers of Bismack Biyombo and Timothy Mozgov last year with the money they got, that somebody could come up with that kind of money for him. You have 2 days to match it. If you think that there's a good chance that'll happen, that someone will do that, and you're not going to match it, you should probably look to trade him by 3 o'clock Thursday Eastern time, because he's going to leave and you're going to get nothing for him. Now, what Colangelo could do is he could match the offer and kind of use Noel as an insurance policy next year. He'll be a backup, but if Embiid continues to have knee issues or foot issues or whatever, you can keep him for a year or till the deadline next year or whatever. And I would think at that point, teams would still have interest in him. That's a calculated risk. If he would get hurt or something happens, now you're saddled with a big, big contract. And you'd also, when you look at it, Embiid would be in line for $25 million a year max contract starting in 2018. You're talking about having $40+ million tied up at one position. So those are the kind of things he has to be aware of. And Ilyasova could conceivably go. The same thing. If he's looking for 3 years and $50 million or whatever it is, and Brian Colangelo doesn't think he's worth it, and that Saric is playing so well that Saric, is the heir apparent there, maybe he trades him for a second-round pick or whatever to a team, and they use him as a 2-month rental, and then he becomes an unrestricted free agent. So, those things could possibly happen.
Yeah, Tom, listening to the Vertical podcast today, Adrian Wojnarowski had said that Noel is seeking a, quote, big number. The Sixers could be in a similar boat. I know he's a different player than DeMarcus Cousins, but kind of back themselves into a corner here where, as a restricted free agent, teams might not want him because they don't know if he's going to sign, and if he wants too much money, then they're not interested. But then the Sixers fear that they get – they're in a tough spot with Nerlens, almost more so than Okafor.
Well, right. Okafor is more cut and dried because if they don't trade him, he's under contract for the rest of this year and 2 more years. Even though he doesn't appear to be a great fit in terms of the up-tempo style, getting up and down the floor, and defensively and rebounding, are not his fortes. He's a scorer. He's a low post scorer. What the situation is there. It's pretty clear that Noel is a better fit. But contractually, it kind of gets interesting, and there apparently were no discussions with him over the summer. They could have extended him then, but I guess the Sixers didn't know maybe what kind of role he was going to play or how he was going to shake out at the position. And, now maybe you could have got him for a more reasonable number that would be palatable, and you would have some control of the situation. Now, as you said, Mike, it's a risk kind of either way. You might have to throw in a lot of money, and it might not be worth it. Or you may say it's not worth it to match, and now he leaves, and you get nothing for the 6th pick in the draft 4 years later. So it's kind of a liar's poker here right now.
Tom Moore with us. Hey, Tom, Joel Embiid practiced full on today, but he's not yet been cleared by the 76ers medical staff. He's listed as doubtful for their next 2 games. Should fans be concerned? This is now 5 weeks out with a bruised knee injury.
Yeah, I think they're just being really cautious, based on everything that's happened. I mean, he went at it with Saric after practice. We got to see him play one-on-one, and I mean, he was drenched in sweat and really being aggressive and shooting inside, shooting outside, banging, and so on. I mean, I think physically, I think he could play. I think that's a concern. The only concern might be how much swelling or stiffness does he have, soreness tomorrow after scrimmaging today, although today apparently was not a real heavy practice. Tomorrow is supposed to be more all out. So Embiid did say that tomorrow is kind of a big test to see how he reacts. He's still hopeful or thinks there's a chance that he could play Friday night. Now, I don't know if that's just wishful thinking or just saying that. I don't know, but I know he is pretty competitive, and he does not like sitting out. And it's been 11 games and 14 out of 15. So it's that's a long time. I mean, one game, the Houston game, since January 20th. So we're talking, 5 weeks later.
Now, I know, Tom, that Embiid told ESPN Radio over the weekend that he wanted to try out playing in back-to-backs before the season ends. He doesn't want to go into next year without at least trying to do a back-to-back at least once. Do you see that happening? They still have 5 back-to-backs yet to go.
Yeah, I don't know, Pete. That's a tough one because it would be nice on one hand, but given the way he's still in a 28-minute restriction, just being how they've been so cautious for so long, I'm not sure that that is a realistic possibility at this point. I mean, if they're going to make him sit out Friday and Saturday, and then you have Monday with Golden State, who knows what happens there? Then you're down to 4 back-to-backs left in the season. I think there's none in April. They're all the final 4 back-to-backs are all in March. So I don't know on the list of things that he could do, could end up doing this year. That's probably fairly down the list, Pete.
He also said that interview, Tom, that he thinks he could play 50 games. He's currently at 31. They have 26 left, 5 back-to-backs. Is that realistic?
Well, he better play in one of the games. If he doesn't play this weekend, you're down to 24. And there's 4 back-to-backs, so that's 20. So he'd have to play in 19 out of 20 games the rest of the way. I don't know. If he does play in one of the games, which I would think Friday this weekend would be a better chance than Saturday because it's at home and so on, maybe he's got a shot. But if he doesn't play Friday and Saturday, who knows if he's going to play Monday? And then you start getting down to where he'd have to play in back-to-backs, and I just don't see it based on the way this season is going and the way sports science and just the conservative nature that they've operated under for several years.
Tom Moore's with us. Calkins Media covers the 76ers, who play Friday night. The trade deadline tomorrow. Joel Embiid, obviously, a big topic of conversation, and Okafor and Noel in there. And on Embiid, something else that I found kind of interesting in that ESPN radio interview, Tom, was he said in that interview that he almost walked away from the game. I mean, I thought that was very impactful. That he said after the second surgery,
despondent too over his brother.
Yeah, that he had the foot surgery, and then his brother, passed away, and then after the second one, he said, "Like, this is enough for me." And I guess that kind of goes into his personality, because he said, "What brought you back?" And he said, "I'm just going to have fun." And I guess that kind of goes to him dancing on the stage and him dancing with the cheerleaders and getting the crowd up when he's on the foul line, as opposed to asking them to be quiet. I mean, he just said, "Look, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have fun in doing it." And I think that was a pretty powerful comment by him in terms of the fact that he almost walked away from this game.
Yeah, he mentioned that to us once before, just kind of in passing. But yeah, I mean, all the time that he spent away, clearly, wants desperately to play, wants to show what he can do, sitting and thinking probably last year maybe that he would be, last year maybe he could have tried to play or whatever, that, the nature of the approach they've taken, and so, cautious and worry of everything. I could understand. And he's young. I mean, he wants to get out and have fun, and he wants to show what he can do. Now, the good news is, in the 2 years he was off, he totally remade himself. I mean, you look at him now, and the way he plays, and his size, and so on. I mean, he took 3 threes in his one season at Kansas. I mean, he'll take 3 threes in a quarter sometimes. Here, and I think he never took more than 9 shots in a game at Kansas. He averaged, I think, 11 points. I mean, totally, just a different player. He has just emerged, and I think he has eclipsed already what people, weren't sure what he could do. And it was also interesting today. I think it was just a joke, but he kept talking about being on the trading block, and how he hopes he's still a Sixer. And he would smile, but he kept doing it. I don't know if it's a way to deflect, attention from the Okafor situation or whatever. But we kind of were looking around like, it's like an alternate reality or something. Like, could you imagine? I mean, people aren't real happy with Brian Colangelo. Could you imagine if he traded Joel Embiid? At this point, I mean, wow.
That scene out of Frankenstein where they have the torches and the pitchforks and all that mutiny.
Yes, exactly.
So, Tom, getting back to Okafor for a minute, since you mentioned him, did he talk today? Did he speak today? And what kind of mindset does he have over the next 24 hours? 3:14 we have now, so we're less than 24 hours away from that trade deadline. How's he handling everything?
He's fine. He says he's just eager to get past 3 o'clock tomorrow, whether he's a Sixer or not. And he said he will not be, upset if he's still a Sixer, because he really likes his teammates, and this is all he knows. I asked him, I said, wouldn't you like a new start? Wouldn't that be kind of a good thing for you? And he said, no. He said, this is all I know, and this is what I've done. And, I would like to continue. I wouldn't mind. I'd be happy continuing here as a Sixer.
What does that say? What does that say? Like, publicly. That is bizarre, though. Don't you think it's a little odd? Like, I guess to say he's saying the right things, but this is a guy who has never really experienced losing. Like, he's been a state champion, a national champion, and now it almost seems that he's content with just being whatever he is. I don't even know what his role is anymore. I mean, he has no role. It's almost like he's content with it.
Well, I mean, I think he realizes, too, that there is a chance that he will not get traded. So you don't want to come out and say, I got to get moved. I really want to go somewhere else. And then if you're still here, after they didn't, you didn't play in one game, and then they told you not to travel to the next game because you might get traded. And now, you come back to your team. I mean, that's kind of that's a difficult thing. So, I mean, you can't believe that everything is completely 100%, the truth. I'm sure a part of him wouldn't mind or would welcome, going somewhere else.
How about this assertion, Tom, that he doesn't fit in Philadelphia because he's not a tough guy? It's a tough guy city that members like Dr. J choking Larry Bird, or AI taking on Rodman, or Charles Barkley fighting Bill Laimbeer, and you could even complete that and say that he's the true Hinkie product. He's tanking himself.
Well, yeah, I don't know if I know what you mean. He's not a powerful whatever guy, but I think it's just that, he doesn't fit the up-tempo style, and that defensively he just doesn't seem to have made enough of a commitment, to work, which is what they need. I mean, Noel, offensively has been better than expected, but still is not a guy that typically is going to win you games at that end of the court. but his impact is at the defensive end. He affects shots, and he gets rebounds, and he helps, and he can run the floor at 6'11", 230 pounds. So he fits here, and with Embiid out, he's had a much bigger role. With Embiid playing, he's 16, 18 minutes a game, 20 minutes a game, whatever it is. So, he is a bit of a finesse guy, but I don't think it's necessarily that. I think it's just more of he just doesn't fit it well in this system.
Tom Moore, Calkins Media, 76ers. Tom, you've watched all this basketball the last 3 years, but Dario is a rookie from beginning of the year to where he is now. How much of an improvement has he made, and what has impressed you about the improvement he has made, the amount of strides he has made?
Mike, I'm kind of amazed because, you think about he played a whole season in Turkey last year. Then he played the Olympics. And then it seemed like earlier this year he kind of hit the rookie wall. But, here we are in the end of February, almost March, and he seems to be playing his best. So I'm sort of amazed that he's, physically been able to, to handle this, and he seems to be getting more confident. That could be a factor in their decision with Ilyasova because he's played so well. He looks like, he could potentially be a starter if he keeps playing like he's played the last 3 weeks. Scoring, and he's certainly a hustler and he's sort of a Philly guy. He plays a Philly style just like McConnell. The two of them do. So but he's a guy who gets really down on stuff. He misses a couple shots. You see him, he kind of exclaims on the court. You can always tell when he's happy or when he's upset, and he expects a lot of himself. So, he has been a big plus for this team, and one of the big reasons they've been able to win some games without Joel Embiid.
Yeah, Tom, he's carried this team. Not like he's carried them on his back all by himself. It has been a team effort, but he's kind of been the go-to guy in this last 2 weeks.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah, he has. He's hit some big threes and made some big plays. Couple of consecutive blocks and big home win less than a month ago. Seems like a really nice young man. So, you're glad to see it. And he really does work hard in practice and after practice and so on. He was going at it with Embiid, and they both declared victory after they both walked off the court with their arms raised. Now, I don't know how exactly that can happen. Now, only Embiid talked, and he half jokingly said that he likes playing against Dario because it gives him confidence because he always beats Dario, and that Dario can't talk trash with him. I guess it was like a Muhammad Ali kind of rap anyway, but it was very interesting. But I think they're both very competitive, and they were kind of complaining about foul calls, and coaches and player development guys were, that's a foul, that's not a foul. So there was a lot of sort of back and forth anyway. So it was that was definitely the highlight of practice today.
We've heard over this 4-year span, I guess, are we out of the process? I don't know. Are we post-process? But we've heard player development a lot. Is Dario and others that you can pinpoint a clear indication that the word player development was warranted?
Well, I think Covington is a good example. He came in as an undrafted free agent, didn't even have a job. They signed him. I think he signed him during the season 2 years ago. Look at McConnell. That's another guy who is an undrafted free agent, would not be in the league if not here. He's hit 2 game-winning shots for the Sixers this year, and he's their starting point guard right now, on a team that's playing pretty good basketball with and without Joel Embiid. So I think they certainly have, developed some players, but I think now you need another guy in this draft, another talented, a third guy. A guard or shooter or somebody like that to theoretically complement Simmons and Embiid, and then kind of go from there. Maybe fill in some of the holes, and perhaps a free agent, not a high level free agent, but somebody who could be a rotation player and a shooter or a wing guy or whatever. And then next year, try to make a push toward a playoff spot. I'm not sure if it happened already next year, but they're certainly heading in the right direction, having won 21 games this year already after winning, 10, 18, and 19 the 3 previous seasons.
Tom, how have other teams, you mentioned the success, how have other teams viewed the Sixers now? And is there some sort of a hat tip to Sam from the other teams now?
Yeah, well, I mean, everyone talks about Embiid first. That's the first thing they talk about. But yeah, I mean, look at that, Pete. Look at the Sacramento trade. Sacramento's has a 2.5 game better record than the Sixers, but I mean, they're holding a fire sale. They're trying to get rid of everybody and anybody who's decent after the Cousins trade, waiving Barnes apparently and all that stuff. So they finished with a worse record than the Sixers. The Sixers have the option to swap that pick, and in 2019. From the trade in which the Sixers got Landry and Thompson and Nick Stauskas, the Sixers get an unprotected pick. And, I mean, if they're rebuilding, 2019, they could be like the Sixers were last year or the year before. That could be easily be a top 5 pick because they're going to be rebuilding with the draft. So, that trade was good, but that trade is getting better. It looks like it's getting better. Almost a year after Hinkie's gone. So yeah, I think maybe some of the people that were questioning, and that was me to some degree before, are realizing that it was tough and it was not pretty and it was gut wrenching losing 199 games in 3 years. But it looks like there is some light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, I try to soften the blow sometimes to the listeners, Tom, by asking them, in their heart of hearts, over the 3 years that they were horrendous, did they really see success from what they had? The core that they had, did they see any sort of sustainable success? And then you can kind of say, no, if your answer is no to that, then what's the difference between winning 42 games and 19 games, or 10, I guess, in the case of where they were, right? I mean, because without winning 10, you never get your hand. And that's the problem with the NBA, right? It's not a Sixers problem. It's an NBA problem that maybe the Sacramento Kings have finally said, you know what, if we can't beat you, we'll join you.
Sure, and look at the Lakers. The Lakers are going to be next season where the Sixers were probably 2 years ago. The same thing. I mean, there's no quick fixes. They're not signing LeBron James or anybody like that. They're going to have to do it with the draft and develop Randall and Russell and Ingram and those guys, and that takes time. There's no shortcuts to that. So I think you're going to see more people doing what the Sixers did as a result of, they got Embiid and they got Simmons, and they have a chance to get at least one high pick this year, possibly two if they're luck into the Lakers' top 3 protected pick. And then in 2019 they have their own pick, and they're going to have the Kings pick. So they have a chance to really add a bunch of people here.
I ask a lot of people who cover the NBA this question, and you've been around a long time, so I'm interested in your opinion. Talking to people, executives, people in front offices now, is there more of an acceptance of this, of losing? Like that is a viable acceptance of building a franchise now? Because fans are like, you play to win. That's what you do. I can't accept losing. But our front office people and people now saying, you know what? It's more beneficial for us to just put the foot on the brakes for a little bit.
I think people are more willing now that they're seeing it that it's working to some degree. At least it's giving you, one franchise player and potentially a second in Simmons. And I think, depending what your goal is. I mean, if your goal is to be the 8th seed every year, and, the Sixers were in that bad grind for about 10 years where they were, from like a 7th seed to maybe the 9th pick in that range every year. And that you don't want to be there because you're never bad enough to get a good pick, and you're never good enough, and they wouldn't have been without, the injuries to Rose and Noah in that playoff series where they beat the Bulls as the 8th seed and the Bulls were number 1. So I think people are realizing if that's where we want to be, we may need to take some hits for a couple years and be willing to do that, and the fan base willing to do that. And then that's how we, that's how we get, and this is with Okafor, the 3rd pick in the draft in 15, really, he's the 3rd string center if they're healthy, right now. So I think there is at least more intrigue and more teams that are considering it, let's put it that way, given everything that's happened.
All right, Tom Moore at T-Moore 76ers with the latest from today's practice. Some news on Ben Simmons. Jahlil Okafor speaks. You can check out that video at T-Moore 76ers and read them over at, of course, Calkins Media, the Burlington County Times, and, of course, right here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. Tom, always a pleasure, pal.
All right, thanks a lot, guys.
You got it, Tom.